100. Okay, I want you to just hold that number in your head for a second. 100 hours. Because look, for most of us working a standard 40 or 50-hour week, that can feel completely exhausting all on its own. But 100 hours? That represents the grueling, almost impossible workload that one of the most famous and productive people on the planet tackles every single week. Welcome to our explainer. Today, we're cutting through the myth and breaking down the reality of how this actually happens. We are looking at the Elon Musk time management system. Born in South Africa, this engineer, inventor, and CEO is constantly called a real-life Iron Man. And, he's famous for this extraordinary vision and his drive to achieve these seemingly impossible goals. Now, a lot of people just assume he's superhuman, right? Like he just has this magical genius-level focus. But while he is obviously incredibly sharp, the truth is actually much more structured. The only reason he's able to do all of this is because he knows exactly how to use his time. He relies on a highly specific time blocking system to basically squeeze every drop of productivity out of his daily routine. So here's how we're going to break this down today. First, the impossible workload. Second, his core strategy, the time blocking system. Third, fueling the machine. And finally, the cost of success. Okay, let's dive right in. Part 1. The impossible workload, running multiple empires. To really understand how the guy works, we have to grasp exactly what it is he's working on. Because, as you probably know, it is not just one job. Just take a look at this list. Tesla, SpaceX, OpenAI, The Boring Company, Neuralink, SolarCity. Actually, scratch that. Running just one of these companies would be the absolute peak of a normal executive's entire career. But Musk, he actively manages all of them. His overarching goals are literally massive, making the human future amazing and, oh yeah, taking humanity to Mars. This unbelievable scale of responsibility is what builds the whole myth around his productivity. But a vision that huge, it demands an immense amount of literal time on the clock. And to put that into perspective, let's look at the math behind that vision. If we compare Elon Musk's schedule to the average working American's 40-hour week, it hits you immediately. He's essentially working double. He is literally putting in 2 full-time jobs, clocking anywhere from 85 to well over 100 hours every single week. Just imagine, for 1 second, trying to double your current weekly work output. It sounds totally unsustainable, doesn't it? Which brings us to the actual secret of how he survives this chaos. Section 2. The time blocking system. The secret to focus. Because the secret isn't magic, it's a proven method called time blocking. By the way, this is a system famously used by other highly successful people like Bill Gates, too. Deliberately blocking out his week is exactly how Musk manages multiple massive companies so effectively. It's macro time blocking at its finest. Mondays and Fridays, those are dedicated entirely to SpaceX in Los Angeles. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, boom, completely locked in for Tesla. This macro-level structure is his ultimate weapon because it totally prevents the cognitive fatigue of context switching. When it's a SpaceX day, his brain is 100% in aerospace mode. When it's a Tesla day, he is locked into automotive mode. So if we break down where those overall hours actually go, this time blocking system dictates that a massive 90% of his working hours are dedicated strictly to Tesla and SpaceX. We're talking roughly 42 hours a week just at Tesla and about 40 hours dedicated to SpaceX. The remaining 10%, that gets divided up among all his other ventures. And let me tell you, he strictly protects these blocks of time. Now, you might be wondering, what exactly is he doing during these massive time blocks? Well, here's the crucial point. He's not your typical CEO just sitting behind some giant mahogany desk handing out orders. No way. He spends an incredible 80% of his time literally in the trenches with his teams, actively doing design and engineering. He's directly involved in creating the product. And, as anyone in tech knows, you absolutely cannot do deep engineering work if you're constantly getting interrupted. So to fiercely protect that 80% design and engineering block, he relies on extreme micro-time blocking tactics. Step 1, he completely avoids phone calls whenever humanly possible. Why? Because phone calls are unpredictable and they totally ruin deep focus. Step 2, he leans heavily on text messages and crucial emails, things he can process asynchronously on his own schedule. Step 3, he multitasks constantly within those designated blocks. Every single minute of his day is accounted for and aggressively defended from outside distractions. And this intense protection of time, it bleeds into literally every aspect of his life. Get a load of this quote he gave in an interview once. Someone needs to invent a food pill. He genuinely views eating as a frustrating waste of time. Because he doesn't like wasting minutes chewing food, he'll routinely just cram his lunch down in a tiny 5-minute window right in the middle of a meeting. That's the level of extreme mindset required to maintain a time-blocking system like this. Which leads us to Section 3, fueling a superhuman schedule. Let's talk daily habits and diet. Operating a highly optimized 100-hour-a-week time-blocking system requires some incredibly strict habits and, quite literally, fuel. Let's walk through the physical realities of this routine. Here's his non-negotiable daily timeline. He goes to sleep at 1 a.m. and wakes up at 7 a.m. That is exactly 6 hours of sleep. And he's actually stated that if he doesn't get those 6 hours, his mind just doesn't work properly and his productivity tanks. So those 6 hours, totally mandatory. Then, upon waking up at 7 a.m., the absolute first thing he does is take a morning shower. He never skips it because it wakes him up and gets him fresh for the brutal day ahead. He usually skips breakfast entirely, relies on morning coffee, grinds through his heavy engineering day, and finally gets the bulk of his calories during a very late dinner. But wait, how does he power through those long afternoon hours when the fatigue sets in? Well, that brings us to another crazy number, 7 to 8. That's the number of cans of Diet Coke he reportedly consumes on a daily basis. He combines that with his morning coffee to artificially spike his energy and basically brute force his mind and body through the exhaustion. Now look, we have to be totally objective here. While his time management system is undeniably brilliant, his diet, it's admittedly terrible. He is a self-admitted coffee and Coke addict. Skipping breakfast, surviving on caffeine and artificial sweeteners, and loading up on calories right before bed at a late dinner, that's not exactly a health and wellness routine. It's a survival routine designed purely to maximize his working hours. However, to keep this explainer balanced, we do need to point out that it's not strictly 100% work 24/7. Despite this absolute chaos, he still schedules in some humanity. He actually spends his weekends with his 5 kids. He intentionally blocks out time to exercise 2 days a week for his physical health, and he somehow still manages to carve out time to read books. So even the Iron Man recognizes that family, movement, and continuous learning have to fit into the calendar somewhere. And that brings us to Section 4, the cost of success, the harsh reality. When we look at billionaires, it's so easy to just see the rockets, the electric cars, and the massive wealth. But when you look behind the curtain, it all boils down to one word: sacrifice. To achieve massive, world-changing things, you have to make massive personal sacrifices. Musk willingly gave up adequate sleep, a balanced diet, basic everyday leisure, and normal comforts. He basically surrendered that balanced life most of us strive for simply because achieving his monumental vision for humanity was more important to him. He put in the grueling hours that most people simply won't. So what's the big takeaway for you here? Well, please. The lesson of this explainer is absolutely not that you need to go out, start chugging 8 Diet Cokes a day, and working 100 hours a week. There's no need to blindly copy his extreme lifestyle. Instead, the real lesson is to build your own routine. Take his brilliant concepts, the strict time blocking, the intense discipline, the hyperfocus, and apply them to your own life. Build a routine that is specifically tailored to your own goals and your own dreams, and then execute it with that same kind of consistency. Because hard work, discipline, and passion, they're totally necessary for whatever it is you want to achieve. Musk proved that structuring your time is the ultimate weapon for productivity. But it always comes with a trade-off. So as we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with this final thought to really chew on. Take a hard look at your own time management, look at your deepest ambitions, and ask yourself, what are you willing to sacrifice to achieve your biggest goals?